I have a problem. God, I have a problem. My brothers and sisters, when we look at NASA, when we look at the National Aeronautics Space Administration, which is a governmental agency that is responsible for the nation's public space program. In many attempts, they have done their best to reach the moon. And it was in 1969 when Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin in Apollo 18, when they were the very first men to walk on the moon. I want you to understand this morning that there is a terminology in NASA that whenever an astronaut reaches a problem, whenever there is difficulty in a situation and they don't know what to do, they have a responsibility to call the command center and say, Houston, we have a problem. And whenever they call the command center, they are calling in hopes that the command center is able to come to their rescue. They're calling the command center in hopes that the command center can get them out of the situation that they are in. And can I suggest today, my brothers and sisters, that I'm grateful this morning that whenever we have problems on the earth, that whenever we have trials on our hand, I'm grateful this morning that I don't have to call a command center to tell Houston that I have a problem. But I'm glad this morning that we serve a God that sits high and he looks low and he guides our feet wherever we may go. And whenever we call him, we don't have to wonder in hope that the Lord is going to come through, because I want to serve notice this morning that we serve a God who is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all that we can even ask or think. That even if he does not want to come through, even if he does not come when we need him to come, I assure you that it does not take away from his ability. Because when you have problems in your life, listen, you've got to learn how to call on the Lord. That when you have issues in your life, listen, you have to learn how to call on the name of the Lord. That when you've got sickness in your body, when you got confusion in your life, listen, you don't need to call FEMA. You need to learn how to call on the name of the Lord. And so this morning, when we look at our text, we find that the Apostle Paul, he has a problem, and because of this problem in his life, he decides to call on the name of the Lord. And so when the curtain arises in our text this morning, we find this morning that the Apostle Paul is defending some charges that were brought against him in Corinth. Because there were many people in that day that did not believe that Paul was an apostle called by God. And so here it is in chapter 12, Paul is providing some evidence to the people that he is more than qualified to do the work of an apostle. And so here it is in verse 1 of chapter 12. If you hadn't torn out, listen, Paul in this text, he's recalling an event that happened in his life. He's recalling an incident that happened in his life to prove that he is an apostle called by God. It is in chapter 12 that Paul says, he says, I knew a man, whether in the body or out of the body. He says, I cannot tell. But Paul says, I knew a man that was caught up in paradise. He says he was caught up in the third heavens. And he said, while I was there, he said, I heard some things that were unlawful for men to hear. And Paul says, because of what I have experienced, he says, because of what I encountered, Paul said that I was in danger of becoming spiritually proud. He said, because of the vision and because I was caught up in the third heaven, Paul said that I was in danger of becoming spiritually conceited. And Paul says to keep me from thinking that I'm more than I am, he says to keep me from being puffed up in pride. I wish I had a prayer church this morning. He says to keep me from becoming haughty, and he says to keep my feet on the ground, to keep me humble. Paul said that the Lord, he gave me something. Paul said that the Lord, he gave me a gift. He said in verse 7, he says, unless I should be exalted above measure through the abundance of the revelation, he says, there was what given to me a thorn in the flesh. So can I tell you this one? The first thing that Paul does in the text, first of all, he apprehends his pain. All right. And can I tell you this one, that whatever you have problems in your life, the first thing you ought to do is apprehend your pain. Because Paul says in the text, he says, there was given to me a thorn in the flesh. Yeah. Can I tell you this morning that the word given in this text, it means to bestow. Y'all quiet this morning. It means, it means to be granted. And so what Paul does in the text, he looks at his problem. He looks at the pain in his life as a gift from God. Are y'all going to help me this morning? And so here in the text, Paul does not feel that God is mistreating him. He does not feel that God is doing him wrong. He does not feel that God has turned his back on him. But what Paul does in the text, he apprehends his pain. He takes hold of his pain by looking at his pain as a gift from God. And listen, the reason why Paul is able to look at his pain as a gift from God, because Paul understands that there is some purpose behind his pain. Y'all gonna talk?